So I know what you guys thinking is like, guys, this language is amazing. You convinced me. I'm going to use all this. Tomorrow I'm going to go to the CP leads and I'm going, look, 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 look. This is what you guys need to use. This is the best. This is the best, right? Well, I think this is the point that I'm going to lose, like, I don't know, 2/3 of you. Because this is where things that have been hammered into us a lot and just habits that we gained are going to start conflicting with what this language is. So, like I mentioned before, there's no classes, right? Everything is a struct. It's like C++. So if I want like a vector, so this is a struct. This is the syntax. So I can just go, you know, again, x is a float, and y is a float, and z is a float. Do you know some studios are using J? Only his studio. Because I guess he can enforce it. Because keep in mind, this is still not even released. As far as I know, there's like, well, either those people are not, either there's more people that are not on the Discord chat, or there's like, I don't know, 6 or 8 of us that are outside of his company that got access to it. Because I'm in a chat with them, and it's just very, very few people getting access to this language. And to me this is surprising, because I thought, you know, a lot of people would be excited about this, and maybe people are, but just people didn't contact them, right? It's super weird, because I just contacted them like, hey, can I get access to J? And it's like, well, when it's ready I can add you. And I was like, yeah, cool. So I don't know, maybe I'm just an oddball in that sense that people didn't really think about asking. But anyway, so you have a vector, and it's a vector free, and now I can just go, you know, we can just, where did we do that? Functions, because now I'm lazy, right? Because we already know how to print stuff, so we can just, you know, I don't need to be writing this stuff all the time. So let's just go print variable v. What is it? Complex types. So basically, yeah, you have a value, it has x with these values, blah, blah, it's of type vector free, right? Makes sense? So, because we didn't initialize it, the values are 0, right? If we put here values, right, we can have default values, then they'll be there. And if you remember, when we went to the new function, there was this thing that I told you, oh, let's ignore it, and it's this, right? So there's a function. This stuff is not really hidden, you can access it. There's a function that is called that initializes the type, right? So there's an actual function that is going to initialize this type, right? And it's interesting, if you check the video where the guy goes over the constructors and destructors when he had them, he kind of explains this, right? And what are the orders and whatever. Back then he did this stuff, but now there's just the initializer. So this is cool. So first thing, they're just structs. Cool. Second thing, and woof, there's no private data. There's no protected data, right? Well, there's no protected data. Doesn't even make sense, because everything needs to be a struct. You cannot inherit. Okay, but we'll get there. Don't close the chat still. Yeah, don't go away. So everything is public. And when I was learning, like the first company that I was at, I had this guy that was like my mentor, and he had a funny quote that back then I felt like, this guy is just, no, this is too much. I get it, he's like a performance guy or whatever, he's really good, but no. And he told me like, the concept of private, in games, it was like talking the concept of the game, the concept of private data doesn't make sense, everything should be public. And I also always thought that this was a bit weird, why wouldn't you want to abstract certain things, but also, you know, I've been hammered with that stuff with the abstraction. But the older I get and the more I see how languages are evolved, I'm kind of starting to agree, because C# has private stuff. But that doesn't matter, because C# allows you to grab the private stuff and manipulate it anyway. It just makes it super hard for you to get it and super error prone, because then if you change something, you just have to go back and change your code when you figure out that it breaks, not at compile time, because now you're saying, oh, I want to access this method that has this name, and and you're just going to get errors whenever they happen. It's no longer at something at compile time. So if you think of it that way, it kind of makes sense that they don't that data is just public. But I get how this is going to put a lot of people off from the language, and no one likes to get their private parsers. That's true, but unfortunately we do it a lot, and I had to do a bunch of that when I did Flux, the Unity extension I worked on, because Unity hid all the cool stuff of the animation system in the private stuff, in private. So I had to then go fetch all that information. I had like giant log function that was like animation proxy or whatever, that was like for me to go and grab and set their stuff through that proxy, and then they update Unity, and unless somebody tells me something, or if you that's true. If somebody tells you specifically, oh, this changed or whatever, well, just come to Portugal. That can be arranged. Especially now that I'm not making any money, that's probably going to be very cheap. But anyway, lost train of thought. Now I can only think of my private parts. Anyway, it just made it super hard for people for me to understand that my solution was broken, because certain things would only be if certain people would use certain functionalities and whatever. So I get it, but I also get that people don't like it. And I guess this is a lot, if you want to follow this kind of language, it's a lot about conventions, right? So you'll go like, oh, if something is with underscore, that means, look, this is private, you don't touch it, right? So that's it. There's no way around it. But something that is also a bit annoying when you work just in general classes, right? Because you have, let's say, a vector free, and then you go, oh, but I want to have something that gets and sets it, and you just do these functions if you want to make it private. But then you go like, well, but sometimes I also want the vector, right, as an array. So this language has something cool that is, it's kind of like unions. It also has unions, but I don't remember exactly the syntax. But this goes like, you just tell the compiler, look, it's a mix of unions and goto. You just tell the compiler, look, jump to where x is defined. And then you can say, I want you to put components in that same memory position. And this is going to be a static array of floats. Right? You can just do this. Now, something that we talked about before is going to come into hand, because now when you hit it, what the hell? This guy is 0, 0, 0. What the hell? It had 1, 2, 3. What the hell happened? Well, because we jumped there, and we told the compiler, well, put this there, but if you don't define something, he puts the default values, which are 0, 0, 0. So you just say, you know what, but don't touch the memory. Yeah, leave whatever is there, just leave it. And now you have this. And now you can go, dot components, right? Right? So this is cool, it's convenient, right? Because you can just have that kind of without having member functions, right? Because there's no concept of member functions. There's no concept of this, right? You can even define functions here. However, right? The functions, like there's no this. So then what happens is that you have to go, okay, I want you to pass a pointer. I want the vector to be a pointer to vector free, right? Let's say you just go print variable. and then you can go either v dot, f with pointer to v, which is just a bit weird, right? So I'm not sure if people will really use it like this, right? But this is the right. This is the problem that you have nothing like that, right? So you can also go like vector free, right, which makes more sense, but still the language doesn't prevent you to use that, right? Okay, so this is the first thing, right? You can have functions inside them. They are just, there's no concept of object, yeah, of this. So this works, right? Oh, and by the way, if you want, right, again, you can also create like a function, right, that is just components, and then you need to pass that, whatever, right? But this is just convenient because then you can just go, component 0, it's going to give you the 1 and whatever, right? So this is super convenient. So first part, was hard. We were already like thinking, yeah, this language is not really for me. This is, I'm a bit on the edge there. I'm not sure. Like one awesome scripting language where VF would assume that it's this. Maybe is this Lua? So okay, cool. So you can have polymorphic structs, right? So you can just go, this is a struct. I want a vector a vector, but I just, I want a vector 2, a vector 3, I want a vector 28, I want a vector, right? And you can have this kind of stuff. You can have a struct that receives arguments, right? And you can just go, look, and I want a type, right? I want to be a type. And you know what? By default, I want that this type is float, right? You can do this kind of stuff. So then you go like, components, so now I'm just going to go v2 and v8 or whatever. What am I? Typical. So they become like this kind of thing, right? It's like a polymorphic vector, and it has components of this. And now you may say, well, but I wanted to have x and y and whatever. And I'm not going to go into that now, but this stuff is super powerful. This language is super powerful in the sense that you can build types at runtime, okay? And at the moment, I know that I'm just going to mess up, but you can do like something like, something like this. And then if I'm not mistaken, it goes like this. Maybe you remove this over here. It's something like this. But basically here you write a string. This in the end needs to return a string. But then it's going to be that. So let's try. Well, let's try. There's no harm in trying. Yeah? So let's just put. So we want, let's say, x float equals 3, right? And let's try to create a vector, and then just print it. Whoopa. No, so it's not like this. Boop, 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 after struct. Okay, so is it like that? No, it's not like that. Do you remember, Oz? Well, again, why don't we just search for that? What happened? What happened? Isn't this what I wrote? Did I do something wrong? Does it have to be for some reason outside? I don't think so. Let's find out. Does it need to receive stuff just for the sake of argument? Okay, okay. Why do you need arguments? Or, although this would be a bit weird. Okay, okay, I don't know why. But I don't think something is right. But basically, well, we can just see this example. So basically, the SOA stuff that he's doing, it's basically that kind of stuff. So you pass here what type you want of something, how many of them, and it goes through the members of that type that you're passing, and defines multiple array of each of the members. Like, this is super powerful, it's super interesting, and this is how they do their like their structure of arrays thing. But I'm not sure what's happening here, because I expect here to have like the X. What? This may be a bug. Yeah, this may be a bug. Because see, now we have it there. So I guess that for some reason you need to pass arguments, otherwise this doesn't work. But anyway, it's cool, it works, right? So you can go just, and I'll report all these bugs. Because again, this language is new, right? And it just works. So this is super powerful because you can build a lot of stuff. And we did this a lot in Gwent. Like, Łukasz was using some stuff, like template D or something like this, something that Visual Studio has, that basically you do like this kind of meta scripting, and then it runs, and it would, you know, create all the functions for all the types, the same kind of thing for serialization and deserialization, so we didn't have to manually write all that stuff, so it was super useful. So you can do that kind of stuff here and also build your types at compile time, right? And something that is also very cool so far in the language is that every time you do a build is a build from scratch. And I've had this stuff happening in C++ that sometimes you just touch something, some H file somewhere, and then you hit build, you run, the code is not doing what you want, the code is not doing, you don't understand what's going on, you try to debug or whatever, you do a clean and a build, and it just works properly. So at the moment the language just rebuilds from scratch, and it rebuilds super fast. He has his game/game engine running at around like 80 or 100k lines, and it builds in like a second, which is like so good. Like, when you're used to those 15-20 minutes of build time, it's just so refreshing. It's really good. So we're going to level up again, guys. Oh, this is going, oof, yeah, over 2 hours. This is this is a doozy. But at least we're going to go through everything, and then you guys are going to be like indoctrinated. So let's say that you have a vector, or no, let's put it this way. You have an entity, yeah? And it's a struct. and this entity has an ID that is an int, and then you want to create a light, and you want that the light is an entity, and the light has an intensity as a float, and whatever, I don't know what here, like is on bool, right? So you want to have this kind of stuff, right? Because this is something that we use a lot, right? It's convenient for us to call things this is that. There's no such thing in this language, and I'm going to lose more of you guys. Light needs to be struct, right? And that's the thing, if you don't have inheritance, then the only thing you can do is you can go with composition, right? And now I'm going to have, you know, my light, it's light, and this light, you know, print variable light, and yeah, it's a light, it has the entity in there with ID 0, it has the intensity, it has the is on, right? But this then becomes super disgusting, right? And when I saw this, I was like, oof, I'm not sure if this language is for me. Like, I was like on board until I got to like stuff like this. Okay, how do you do this? These hierarchies of things and whatever. And then I discovered, because the big problem, right, is that you have something like this. So then if you want to go, oh, what's the ID? Then you have to go like, right? It's just disgusting. It's like, yeah, I can get there, but then I have to go like, oh, it's like dot entities just... So, what would be cool is this, right? I just go, light, what's your ID? And there's this magic word. And this magic word is using. This is so cool, because this is not just this. This is also can be used in scopes. So you can just go well, let me show you an example. So let's say we had a function, right? Oh, okay, cool. So like turn light, it's a function that is going to receive a light, right? And it's going to go like it's going to be a bool, right? And you want to just go, oh, L dot is on equals on, right? You want to have something like this, right? And you can do that kind of stuff. In fact, we're just going to go like, just put it here for the sake of argument. We're just going to go turn light true, and here let's just print the light, right? And makes sense, we have the true there, everything's fine. But it's like, yeah, but you know, I kind of like that this would be like a class, you know, that I can just access stuff. So you can just go, you know what, using, yeah. And when you're using, it still works. The way using works is it grabs whatever is in this context and it pretends that it's in this context, right? So it gives you that convenience. But again, when we have a few using with both IDs, this is the thing. If you have a name conflict, it's going to tell you, right? So if I go just for the sake of argument, no, in fact, you know what? Let's do it here, because remember I told you you can use using, yeah. So what if I want to go? You know what? I don't want to do that. I just want to go like using L, yeah, because I want to print the ID. And this is cool. Like, to me, if it had stopped here it was already good enough, right? The fact that you can just go, you know, oh, using inside the function it does whatever, and the fact that you can just go, oh, I just go light dot something of the entity and it gets it, right? To me that would be enough. That's good. I'm good. It's fine for me. Thank you very much. But you can do this. And again, it doesn't mean that you have to, right? But you can. And also, it doesn't mean that you're set with this, because you can just go this. So when you do this, it becomes like, right? This still works, right? So it's still, you still can access it both ways. Now what we were asking before was, okay, what if we have the thing, right? Well, we already have an ID. So now if I go here, right, if I go this, it's going to tell me that there's a conflict, right? So yeah, you have this and you have that, right? And again, nice error messages, right? It doesn't just go like some weird thing and then you have to figure out. It tells you, look, you're grabbing this thing from here and this thing in the same context, and this is causing problem, right? So it's super, super nice in terms of just helping you figuring out what's the problem and what can be the solution. So this is pretty good, but wait, there's more. So what if you want, you know, you want to do something with the entity. So let's say that an entity by default can have something that is like is visible, and it's always. So by default, no, this by default is, you know, it's visible. So, and you want to have something that you go like, you know what? I want the function that is like set visibility, and this needs to have an entity, right? So it's a pointer to the entity, and it's going to be a thing visible. God damn it. And you're just going to go like this, is visible, right? You want to do something like this. When you're just, let's remove this from now from here. When you use the using, right? You can just go set visibility. What am I printing? It's not what I wanted to print. Huh? That's pretty cool. So in a way, it's like it. But again, this only works if you have using. If you remove this, right? Right, it's going to tell you, whoop, 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 whoop. You're trying to pass a light. It wants an entity. Blah blah blah. Yeah. So you need to use the using, right? But it's super useful because you can still, like, it becomes like a first class, let's say, composition, yeah, because it works like inheritance. It's still composition, but it works like inheritance. So you don't have the issues of composition, you don't have the problems. And by the way, this is not virtual functions or whatever. There's no such concept here. Everything is defined at compiler time. And this is part of why it's so good, because it's fast. It doesn't have, like, the memory knows exactly where it's going to go. Now the issue you're going to get into is, what if you then have something, you know, well, issue, it's not an issue, right? Because if you have something that receives a light, right, and then let's say that for the sake of argument this is going to just go, well, whatever, we're just going to print. Then what's going to happen is that, see, when the compiler is going through, it's going, okay, you're passing a light that, sure, it has the using, but I have a function that matches it better because this receives a light. So it's going to default to the code of calling this one, not this one, right? But again, because of the way this works, you can just go dot entity, because even with the using, that dot entity still works, right? So this is very, very, I think it's done in a very, very smart way. It's like, it's intuitive, it's extendable, it's going to still be performant and all of this stuff. And again, I don't know how this is going to scale up, like using such a language is going to scale up with big teams, right? You have like, I don't know, 60 programmers just, yeah, I don't know how this is going to go, but I don't know, to me, in terms, at the moment, personal stuff that I do, like just fooling around, this is the language, because it's just fun to work with, right? It's just very, very usable. And initially I was worried about, well, but what about debugging? But then I saw that I can just debug it fine in Visual Studio, so it's like, well, okay, I'm all in. So this is very, very cool in my opinion. Was there anything I wanted to talk about this more? I don't think so. I just noticed something that I didn't actually, when I talked about the functions, I didn't say that, you know, you could pass the lambdas, but, you know, you can have something that, you know, let's say you have some function that receives a function, so you can just do this kind of stuff, right? You can just define the lambda there, right? Like that works, because again, the syntax is always the same, right? That works. And this is the thing that I had.